Hey everyone, welcome back. Okay, so today's discussion, we are going to be looking at the Baroque in Italy and Spain. I guess the place that we should start is with Baroque, the word Baroque. It comes from the Portuguese word Barroco, which is essentially like flawed pearl, like oblong, not perfect, but a flawed pearl. And as we're going to see as we kind of explore into this topic that Baroque is not one specific style specifically. There are many variations within the Baroque era. But I guess ultimately what I'd like to say is that the Baroque can all be summed up by using the word lux, Lux, which is, it's rich, it's extravagant, it is overly dramatic, it is overly theatrical, it's drama, it's emotionalism, and it has, for the large part, mass appeal. We've been talking about this idea of the artist as like this international rock star kind of idea, and because art now at this point in time, in the 17th century, we do have this globalization and of information and art, and that's largely because this is also the age of exploration and colonization, where many countries in Europe are colonizing the continent known to be known as the Americas, and globally, the rest of the world, they are conquering and colonizing and exploiting the indigenous inhabitants and the local resources. So we see Europe becoming extremely wealthy and extremely extravagant and over the top, and this is because of all of the wealth coming back into Europe from colonization. So we also happen to see these rise of powerful monarchs and just that amass an amazing amount of wealth. So remember from previous lectures, we are headlong into the Protestant Reformation. And just a quick recap, right? The Protestant Reformation takes place in October of 1517. A monk by the name of Martin Luther, excuse me, essentially rejects the Pope's authority in Rome, as a result, there is a massive split. Remember the Protestant Reformation. That's what it is, Protestant. He's protesting the overindulgence of the Catholic Church, and specifically citing, again, these 95, his 95 theses, or his 95 flaws, or these 95 places where the Catholic Church is going against the Word of God and going against the Bible. And this is all the Protestant Reformation is largely a result from Gutenberg movable type print press, because now we can disseminate information more quickly, and our literacy rates just begin to elevate. And forgive me, I'm going to do in a nutshell kind of synopsis of what's going on here, and I am really giving you a glossed over version, but essentially the idea that Luther was really trying to get at was the fact that there was no longer, so I guess through the Catholic Church's practice of interpreting the Bible for its practitioners, rather than allowing the practitioners to read the Bible themselves, there is this disconnect between myself and God, or yourself and God, and there's no longer this personal connection, because everything has to be translated through, and because of the way that the church was selling indulgences, the way that they were essentially keeping people from reading, it was a effective, I guess, way of social control, and the fact that the Reformation just put this all into chaos. And we were allowed, they were allowed to flourish, and multiple sects kind of break off of Lutheranism, and but that is essentially is that the average person can read the Bible and interpret it for themselves, and they don't need a long list of people with all of the bishops and the archbishops and the popes and all the cardinals rather, and all the different intermediaries that are in the process between the consumer and the thing itself, right? The practitioner and God itself. They don't need this long list of people to tell you what it means, right? So what ends up happening in 1545, Pope Paul III convenes what is known as the Council of Trent. This takes place in Trento, Italy. And essentially it's a council or a series of meetings where they address Martin Luther's theses, and they are enacting a series of reforms to allow the church to fix Luther's issues. And this is what is going to be known as the Counter-Reformation. And the Counter-Reformation has again, I'm glossing over a lot, and I'm kind of only going to be focusing on the idea of art, I suppose, more specifically here for the purposes of this course. But know that the Council of Trent and some of these reforms that the Catholic Church is trying to enact does have a wider appeal. There are, when we get into like Pope Sixtus V, his plan for Rome, which are, these hydraulic waterways of the city for plumbing, city layout and planning. There's a lot of things that are going into this that are not just specifically about the opulence of art, but I guess, but just to know that it's a much deeper thing. They're not just going to say at the Council of Trent, oh, this is how we do it through art. That is just but one way. So this goes on, and getting, I guess, back to Pope Sixtus V, he really enacted this campaign to reestablish the predominance of and the preeminence of the church within Italy, but within Europe. And a part of how they decided that they were going to do this is that they, in order to get the people back into the church, and in order to get the people, I guess, to accept the authority of the church, they decided that they were going to reprioritize art and imagery within the church. And it's not that art and imagery had never been a part of the church, but up until this point, what largely we see as far as religious paintings and religious artwork goes, you really had to understand what was going on. It was sometimes very difficult to read. It was sometimes very surreal. And sometimes we're not even looking at religious art, right? We're looking at Greco-Roman mythologies that have been intertwined with this Christianity. So now we have these ideas of pagan Christian blend over because, right, we're in the age of humanism, and we're the Italian Renaissance is all about this idea of potential for human greatness, and it really had God removed. So a lot of these things were very mixed matched and very kind of surreal, and there was not a lot of direct contact through the artwork. And what we're going to see, in the course of the next lecture, is that we are going to see a reprioritization of, again, art and imagery that have an emotional but also an intellectual connection to the people and to the practitioners. So let's start off with architecture. Okay, so we talked about that the Renaissance kicked off with the competition for the doors for the St. Peter's Basilica. And St. Peter's is the church of the Pope. And one way that Sixtus V decides to reestablish the church is he hires a guy by the name of Carlo Maderno, and they completely demolish the old St. Peter's Cathedral, and they build what we see here on the right. This is the east facade of St. Peter's, the new basilica, right? The Vatican City in Rome. They wanted to reestablish power and authority, and essentially, by tearing down the old St. Peter's, that was a 1,200-year-old church at that point. So this was something that was completely new, because Sixtus V wanted Italy to be, and Rome very specifically, to be the Baroque capital of the world. So he got in Maderno, and Maderno is using these traditional Greco-Roman ideas in architecture, but he's taking them to the extreme. He is playing with this extreme light and shadow, where no longer high Renaissance facades were flat and structured and rational. We are now seeing extravagance. We are seeing, rather than flat engaged columns, now we are seeing a much more dramatic outcropping of, they're still engaged columns, but we see the very extravagant Corinthian style tops, but far more columns than are needed. We still see this kind of harkenness back to the Pantheon with these triangular pediments here. Of course, the obelisk, we'll talk about that in a minute, is square in the view of this particular shot. Sorry about that. But we are seeing, the way that there is a rationality, but the size differences, the way that the pediments have these mix-matched circle or ovular pediments, and we're going to get back to this idea of Baroque, or this flawed pearl, or these ovals as well. The domes, this is extremely over the top as far as what we have seen thus far. And the one on the left, Santa Susanna, this is the facade. This is where the Pope really saw who Maderno was, and he was really attracted to Maderno's style here. And he was the one, or this is the particular building that got him into the commission to build the new St. Peter's Basilica. But really what we're looking at is the shadows, right? The depths of texture, really this play with light, and we're going to see this kind of optical illusion a lot coming up in Baroque architecture, and it's really, really, really cool. So this is just a quick map of the Vatican City. We're here. Currently, what we are just looking at here is the eastern facade of St. Peter's Basilica. The obelisk and the piazza is here. This is the Sistine Chapel that we looked at with Michelangelo is right here. So just kind of give you some context of what we're looking at. So this is in the piazza, the plaza, right, of the center of Vatican City. And we're going to hear this particular name quite a bit. Although Maderno did do the facade, the next character that we see, Bernini, you're probably going to get sick of hearing about him, because we're going to talk about him a lot. He seems to touch a lot of things. So Bernini is, let me just tell you, within the idea of the Baroque, that within art and architecture and sculpture, Bernini really sets the tone for this period. His skills are technically virtuosic. He has an amazing sense of style. He has an amazing eye and he's playing with this extravagance, and is quite remarkable in some of his architectural kind of feats, and when we look at his sculptures as well. So, but let's take a look at this again. This is St. Peter's Basilica, and this is the Piazza, the Plaza, and we see these two outstretched kind of two rows of colonnades, and these are his kind of his idea that these were St. Peter's, right? Again, and St. Peter is the original or the first pope. These are Peter's arms welcoming the people, welcoming them in. So this is kind of like the metaphor for what we're looking at. But if you notice the way these are coming in, we see very specifically now this idea of the Baroque, this flawed pearl, this ovular shape. In the Renaissance, we're looking at circular forms, right? And here we're looking at a lot of ovals, and that's what we're going to see. We're going to see trapezoids, trapezoidal shapes. We're going to see plays on that quadrifoil design that we were looking at. That's kicked off the High Renaissance with the eastern doors of the basilica. And some of the ideas here that no longer the plutonic forms. We are now looking at dramatic geometry. We are looking at trapezoids that can, or certain angles that create dramatic effect. What we're actually looking at is an optical illusion. The way our eyes view light and the way that light bends. If you were to stand there, it would be, things in the distance seem to recede. So we have these orthogonals that go back to a vanishing point. Well, in order to make the illusion of the church that much bigger on the horizon and to show that much more predominance over the landscape, Bernini designed the two flat part of these arms of the colonnades to actually angle out. So when you're standing at the obelisk, this thing here, and obelisks, we'll talk about that in a second, but if you're standing at the obelisk, then the optical illusion is, instead of the basilica and these arms receding into the distance to that single vanishing point, they actually open up so they are straight. And what that does is that puts the basilica, the facade, at an extreme, almost hyper-realistic foreground. And it's just overwhelming. And it's an optical illusion. It's a technical feat of genius, really, and that is what Bernini is doing. He is playing with. It's kind of hard to see in some of these shots. You'll have to Google or look in your text. The way he's playing with these Tuscan style columns, which is kind of a play on the Doric style. Okay, so obelisks. The Pope Sixtus V wanted to use obelisks very specifically as like geographical landmarks within the city. This particular one was from the conquest of Egypt, brought back, and it was really just to show the might of Rome. Of course, obviously, let's just say that Bernini wasn't planning the piazza for bus parking, but the fact that this still would have been full of people. This is a grand, over the top, extravagant feat of architecture. There's a few other things that I want to show you inside the new St. Peter's Basilica. This is the Scala Regia, or the royal stairway. This is the stairway that goes into the Pope's private quarters, but it is, or into his apartments, the Pope's apartments. Remember, we talked about that in the old St. Peter. People like Raphael were so admired that they had apartments in the Vatican. Well, okay, so obviously this is the new church, but these are same ideas. We still see the barreled arches here, but they're no longer these smooth barreled arches. They are, look at the extravagance, look at the amount of detail. The carving here, the stone, the way, again, these are the Tuscan kind of Doric hybrids, right? They're just, everything is super over the top and super ornamented and like ornamental. It is just very dramatic. All the coins that are here, rather than just having these straight lines. It's just a very dramatic piece. But this is where the Pope would recede, and of course this light here, this blinding window, right? I guess the ascension, almost, right, to that holy place, next to God. But that's not necessarily everything that people would see, but what you would see, what I would like to focus on, is what is a work called the Baldacchino. Now, this thing is absolutely massive. And just to give you, I gave you a few different kind of shots and insets of what we're looking at, but the bottom left and the image on the right really will help you set the scale. Now, just to give you some perspective, an average 6-foot male would, this would come to about a little bit of their waist. So a male's head would be about here, right in front of this desk here, or the pulpit. So that's the massive scale that the Baldacchino is, that this giant thing is. And here's just kind of an idea of what we're really looking at. Even here, it's kind of difficult, but this is the throne of St. Peter. Is essentially what we're looking at. Now, just some things. This is 100 feet in the air. This thing is massive. It's the size of an 8-story building. Okay? It is all cast bronze. It was cast in 5 different parts, but all of this is bronze. It is, the columns themselves here are 66 feet tall. It is just it's an impressively heavy, dense piece. Baldacchino really I translates to silk of Baghdad, and it's the way that all of this is cast in bronze. There's a cross that sits atop of the globe, really kind of signifying the idea of the church's authority over the world, over the church, over the globe. That is on top. And then, of course, this is the umbrella with these angels on top. More or less the umbrella over the rest of the world. Christianity is the umbrella. And then this area here quite literally is the throne of the Pope. And then, of course, we see back here this giant stained glass window, this giant rose window with a dove in it, signifying God. So it's essentially, being the conduit from God to Jesus to the Pope to the people. So, we can see this kind of this transition. And that's called the Cathedra Petri, the throne of Peter. And you'll see all sorts of different things around here. If you look at it in this, there are bees, and is the symbols of Pope Urbain's family, the Barberini family. Again, remember the Medicis had oranges, and there's all of these different kind of connotations, because we still have these very wealthy families who are into the papacy, or that get into the papacy of the Medicis. So, but this is the particular family is the Barberini family. The bronze was acquired from the portico of the Pantheon, the front part of in the Pantheon. So we're still seeing a little bit of this back to the Greco-Roman, but these aren't Greek or Roman columns. These are something completely different. The way that they are spun and undulated and full of texture, it's all over the top. And this is meant to absolutely overwhelm you. This is to show the power and the might, the divine glow, right, of God, and that the popes, all the popes are the descendants of Peter, and this reestablishes the authority of the church over the people. So let's take a look at some things. This is a reoccurring theme, actually. So Bernini was a sculptor, and this is Bernini's David. And I would actually, I'm going to put him up against a couple of the other Davids that we've seen thus far. We're kind of looking at like 200 years of Davids here. On the left, we have Donatello's David, of course, right, in the early Renaissance. In the middle, we have Michelangelo's High Renaissance. And then, of course, Bernini here. But they're all at different stages. I guess Donatello's on the left, at that early Renaissance. He's very young, and this is more the traditional, I guess, biblical story where this is after the battle, right, where he's victorious over slaying Goliath. And he kind of has that snotty attitude, right? He's standing on the head of Goliath and poking his head with a sword. And then we see the shift in Michelangelo, where he is an older, more contemplative David. This is right prior to the battle, and we see this extreme contrapposto pose and this extreme perfectionism within the human form. Again, this idea of humanism, and if we're looking at Leonardo da Vinci and the Vitruvian Man, where it is right, the perfection of the circle and the square, the heavenly realm and the earthly realm. And what that really is he's calm, he's rational, and this shows the humanist idea of potential. And then again, now let's move back to Bernini's. He's much older. We're seeing David get much older in the story here in the chronology here, but this shows David in the middle of the battle. He is in the throes of action and intention, and he's emotional about it. He has. I'm going to move back to this image here. The look on his face, and you can see the over extreme contrapposto pose where he's now has launched his pebble from his sling, and he has just this very dramatic, over the top pose that is extremely full of intention and very, very full of action. Bernini had said that that he only carves away what isn't needed, and what is left is the sculpture. And I think that this particular sculpture of Apollo and Daphne, really kind of made and commissioned by the Borgheses, kind of really show that, So again, we're looking at we've looked at this motif before. This is based off of the Greek mythology Greek mythology. This is Ovid's Metamorphosis. This is where the nymph is tries to. Apollo tries to steal Daphne, who's a nymph, and take her for his own, right? And as a way to tame nature. Though instead, Daphne turns herself into a tree. I'm not necessarily certain why she doesn't turn Apollo into a tree, but that's not how the story goes. She turns into a tree. This is how she preserves her virginity and her innocence. But this is all one solid block of marble, and the thin delicacies, the thin delicate branches, the leaves, it's soft. It is flowing through the air. It looks as if these leaves and branches that are morphing from her hair and coming out of her body and her fingers. They're so thin and delicate, and it would take such skill to be able to carve in and out of the solid block of marble. Technically, this is extremely difficult. This is what sets Bernini just on par with greatness, and what sets him apart from everyone else. He is a very virtuosic artist, an architect. And I think that Bernini, in a lot of ways, can be summed up with this particular piece here. And remember, we're looking at the Baroque is extravagant. It is theatrical. It's dramatic. It is emotional. This is the inset, and we'll take a look at another few slides of what this is a larger piece of. But this is the Ecstasy of Saint Teresa. So this was commissioned for the Santa Maria della Vittoria. This is the Corona Chapel. We will take a look at the private chapel. So, but remember, we're looking at private chapels. Well, in the Baroque era, what we start seeing is that, and there are some families who, instead of having private chapels, because that seemed as too extravagant. Who do you think you are to have your own church? More or less of an idea, right? You're getting too big for your britches. So then what we start to see is this shift and transition into having private family chapels within the church. So they would have little private seating areas where only that family or those family members or people who were invited could be there. Regular patrons couldn't just partition there. So this is kind of what we're looking at. But listen to what Bernini says of this particular work. And let me say quickly that Saint Teresa of Avila, she was a Carmelite nun, and this is the depiction of Saint Teresa here. She was a Carmelite nun that had visions, hallucinations. I don't know what you want to say, how you want to say it. We don't really know, but essentially she was having visions, and she wrote a book about these visions. She had visions of angels, and this is an excerpt of one of her writings. So beside me on the left appeared an angel. He was not tall, but short and very beautiful, and his face was so aflame that he appeared to be one of the highest rank of angels, who seemed to be all on fire. In his hands I saw a great golden spear, and at the iron tip there appeared to be a point of fire. This he plunged into my heart several times, so that it penetrated to my entrails. When he pulled it out, I felt that he took them with it, and he left me utterly consumed by the great love of God. The pain was so severe that it made me utter several moans. The sweetness caused by this intense pain is so extreme that one cannot possibly wish it to cease, nor is one's soul content with anything but God. This is not a physical but a spiritual pain. Through the body, though the body has some share in it, even a considerable share. Okay, so this is all made of marble, right? And how over the top Saint Teresa is. She is flung back in ecstasy as we see the angel here smiling, and the tunic on the angel. Just it astonishes me the level of detail and fluidity that they are able to achieve with marble. But but look at her mouth. Her mouth is open. Her eyes are almost closed, but not quite. Her hands and her feet, she's just thrown back in utter ecstasy. It's an extremely sensuous, sumptuous piece. It is extremely lush and extravagant. I don't want to say it's erotic, but at the same time, it's not erotic. This idea of sweetness, sweet, intense pain that you couldn't possibly want to cease. Several several moans that was caused by this extensive and the intense experience. It's very orgasmic, very climactic. So let's take a look at some of the insets here. Now, again, remember, I told you, drama, right? This is all about drama, and Bernini was extremely into drama and the theater, and you can see it clearly now in the image on the right. So quickly, let's just some of the insets here. Look at the face on the angel. He was enjoying stabbing and penetrating Saint Teresa with the arrow of God. But okay, so let's take a look at this. The way that this is all painted and constructed, the marble is suspended, so it looks as if it is, just floating in the air. Very dreamlike quality. And if we remember that, right, these are commissions. So, and instead of having them painted in, of course, they are physically sculpted in. There are a lot of pictures, there's some in the book, and that you can look online where they show them. It's quite interesting. But look at how the dramatic aspect of this. Look at how full of drama this is. There is a window right here with a mirror that would allow the light. So when the light shines through, this illuminates, essentially showing this light of God, and that you can see these light rays coming down, and it explodes because the high contrast of the white marble with these dark columns and this gold kind of shimmery background. It pops and it explodes to accentuate, right, the ecstasy in which Saint Teresa is feeling. The fresco painting here, with all of the cherubs and the angels opening up, and we see the light of God, right, and of course the dove. Okay, so enough of Bernini. Let's take a look at a very similar name, though. This is Francesco Borromini. What we are looking at is two different views of the same facade, or the same front. No, this is not Gringotts from Harry Potter. This is the San Carlo alla Quattro Fontaine, or the anglicized Saint Carlo of the Four Fountains. But he is taking, Borromini is taking Moderna, and he is just cranking it up to like 15. He is taking it so much further than Moderna ever had dreamed of. He is using this Greco-Roman style front, but he's using this very serpentine, very liquid front and this facade where we're going to start seeing these undulations where we have convexed, concave, convexed, alternating styles in this very serpentine kind of style. And it is playing with light, it is playing with shadows, movement. It is deep recesses with contrast. It is just so over the top. It is all drama all the time. And if we look up at the top, we see this, again, flawed pearl, this oval. No longer will we see circles. We are going to see these ovular shapes pop up everywhere. We're going to see scalloped shapes. We're going to see traditional, we're going to take a look at the inside in a minute, and look at the domes and see some of these scalloped quadrifoil shapes of the early Renaissance, and how they're taking these forms and changing them, and just creating so much more dramatic and visual interest. The way that these columns, right, everything is so crammed in, but all of this opalescence and, these interesting style combination of columns, and it's just and as a note, it's all drama all the time, but the oval up on top would have housed a mirror, an actual mirror, to reflect the light, because it would help accentuate the shadows and the contrast by the light being reflected, and it would make the facade that much more rich in texture and contrast and movement. And again, the liquidity of this particular piece of architecture is so Baroque. This is the interior of the dome. Again, we no longer see this the planned planned architecture with these circles and squares and these specific domes. Now we see ovals, again, all back into this ovular shape. We see these octagonals and crosses within the domes. These things now we call these coffers. Coffers are essentially like buttresses for the exterior of cathedrals, where it would carry the weight. Coffers, these take the weight off of the dome, but all of the way that the light casts the shadow and all of the textures, it's all about optical illusions. It is all about fooling the eye and really causing light and dark and play and movement, and it keeps you visually interested and is just over the top and extravagant. And if you think that this is getting over the top and extravagant, wait until we get into the Rococo, which is coming after the Baroque. It is that much more over the top in the detail and the ornamentation, right? The dramatic nature of all of the lights and the details that are in here, all of the additions. It's quite spectacular. It's quite beautiful. So another facade here. This is the San Avia San Ivo, I guess, San Ivo of Sapanzia. This, we start to see this play of, again, convex, concave shapes. The way that the light is all about drama and playing here. So the way that this here is concaved, and then this top part is all convexed. Essentially, when the shadow and the light hit these and they come down, it accentuates this curve here on the bottom, because the way that the light hits, there's a huge dramatic shadow that happens, and it makes it look like that is just folding in on itself, and it's this push and pull, and it is so dramatic, and it is so over the top, and it is it is quite amazing. But note here that Borromini has now deviated from a very traditional kind of style of window treatments. There are no more pediments, right? These are the circular forms over these windows. They're just squared windows with these circular forms here now, rather than these triangle pediments or like these half circle style pediments. There are none. It's different. We have not seen that. We see these multiple engaged columns where it appears as if there are multiple columns stacked on top of each other, but we know that they're not. This is the interior. Again, what we're looking at to the left and what we're looking at to the right are the same. So this is that augmented or scalloped. Again, we see these shapes and forms, but this is that. Remember that similar to that quadrifoil, right? The triangular form here, 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 and then we see another triangle form here with these circles. Again, go back to look at the St. Peter's Basilica and the doors of the baptistry. We see this quadrifoil design with the Trials of Abraham. Remember? But look at all of the stars and all of the intricate carving and all of the intricate detailed work here in the dome. Okay, so that's architecture. Love architecture. Absolutely love architecture. But that's not all that we're going to be looking at, of course, in this class. I have to spend a little time talking about other things. So let's move to painting. We are currently, let's talk about this fellow for a minute, Annibale Carracci. And the Carraccis are extremely important to this time frame in the Baroque, in the early Baroque especially, because we've talked about guilds. We've talked about the guild system before, where a child may have been noticed to have artistic talent, or wanted to go into the trades. And remember, guilds could be the linen guilds, tapestry guilds, metalsmithing guilds, goldworking guilds, pottery guilds, artisan guilds. They had guilds for everything, and the guild system really, remember, was, they kind of set the standard for pricing and trade and all of that, and the importance of what was going on with what they were doing. Guilds were, if a child was noticed to have talent, let's say for an artisan guild, they would go and they would work under a master. And then for a painter or whatever, they would go in at about 6, 7, 8 years old maybe. And they would study for a period of time till they're about 18, and they would have to create a masterwork of art. And if they didn't, of course, they wouldn't be considered a master painter, and they would have really kind of all for naught. But what the Carraccis are different. They started the first art academy in like the Balinese Art Academy in Bologna. And it is a more traditional, or I guess what we would think today as more of a classroom academic environment rather than the guild system. The understanding was that art could be taught just like mathematics or just like anything else. Art can be taught through a series of principles and practice and discipline. So we start to see this system come through and start to take root within the Baroque era, and it shapes how we are going to move through art in the next coming centuries. But yeah, so the first art academy in Europe was started by the Carraccis, and so Annibale comes from a family of artists. His brothers were artists, right? And this is what we're looking at is one of Annibale's paintings. This is the Flight from Egypt. So oil and canvas, right? Now canvas is the thing. Very little more will we see painting on wood. We're not going to see tempera paints, but we are going to see a lot more frescoes, of course. excuse me, but oils are really now the standard medium for artisans. This is a very classic, kind of very rational Greco-Roman style painting. He's really kind of classicizing this idea, and we see in the background this Romanesque, town. What we're looking at is the flight from Egypt. This is the biblical story of where Herod kills all the children, and Mary and Joseph take baby Jesus and they flee into Egypt, of course. But it's interesting that even though God is the model, we are still looking at real life, but it's still very much in this romantic kind of pastoral sense. We see the town, we see the birds flying, right? The ferryman, the sheep rancher, the farmer, and the cow. It's just a very pastoral, calm, peaceful, orderly scene. And look at the Holy Family. They're so small right in the front, it almost kind of in a like, oh, I forgot that you were even standing there. If you wouldn't have known who they were, you probably wouldn't have paid attention to them. And I find this juxtaposition of this calm rationality with, like, them escaping murder. I think that is that juxtaposition is really, really important as we move forward into looking at these non-secular images, because I think what we're going to start seeing is that the Baroque the Baroque era really doesn't focus on, although it does focus on all these extravagance, so on and so forth, but like the Dutch of the North, or the Flemish of the North in the Northern early Renaissance, they're looking at realness. They're looking at everyday life. They're looking at regular people with a lack of flashiness and a lack of kind of spiritual or divine effects. And I think that this shows it. I think we're going to, when we get into people like Michelangelo Caravaggio, we will see that to the extreme. This is another Annibale Carracci. This is The Love of the Gods. This is a fresco work. All right. Again, this was commissioned by the Farneses. This is the Palazzo Farnese. The Farneses were Farnese was a cardinal, and why I wanted to show you this, one, it's a barreled arch, but excuse me, I'm sorry, let me step that back. It is not a barrel vaulted arch. It is painted to look as if it were a barrel vaulted arch. It is also painted to look as if these frescoes were framed. All of this is a painting. All of this is a flat ceiling. All of this is remember this term, trompe l'oeil, right? This is to fool the eye. This is to make it look as if these paintings are hanging here, right? This is all painted. This is all fresco work. So we have a term for that. We call it quadro riportato, which is false frames, or like a faux frame, kind of an idea. But he is blending. We're going to see this a lot more, and we're going to start seeing this in domes and architecture in the Rococo, because this is a stroke of mastery, that you can paint something so hyper realistic that it fools the eye. It's trompe l'oeil. It looks real. There are instances and stories where people will paint flies on the frame of a painting, and it is so realistic that people try to brush the fly away and realize only upon touching it that it was just a painted image. So some of these things are just, you have to think about this and the time frame. This is mind-blowing, right? The rich colors that we see, the imagery that we're looking at. But again, more importantly, just the fact that all of this is an optical illusion, right? And that's another thing that you can remember very specifically about the Baroque era. God, I don't know why I keep saying Baroque era, but I'm not going to edit it out. You're going to have to listen to it. But that's one thing you can say about the Baroque era as well, is this over-the-top extravagance, this luxe nature of everything, but it was all about optical illusions as well, right? It was all about fooling the eye. Okay, let's take a look at another Michelangelo. This is Michelangelo Merici Caravaggio. We just call him Caravaggio. He was born in Milan, in the town of Caravaggio. Go figure. We're seeing a pattern here. He grew up poor. He grew up on the streets. This is a painter who really came out of earned his stripes, I guess, so to speak, right? He wasn't born to aristocracy. He wasn't born to a wealthy family. He wasn't born to power and status. He was born poor. He grew up in the streets. He had a rough life, and yet he became one of the most influential painters in the period. Again, he only apprenticed for about 4 years with this artist, or this master by the name of Simone Petrosano, and he was known because he lived on the streets. He was a rough character. He was a I guess a shady dude. That's the lifestyle that he was born into. And he had to flee Milan to Rome after wounding a police officer in a bar fight. And he was often known for fighting and drinking and fighting and drinking and fighting. When in Rome, he worked at a workshop just as a laborer, and largely he taught himself how to paint. Caravaggio is not very good at linear perspective. He's not a very good painter. He's not very good at painting humans. Some of his proportions are wrong. He's not really skilled at painting the foreground, and he's certainly, what we're going to find is that he makes up his own style very specifically because he has no idea how to paint backgrounds. So during this time, he is painting. He has a painting called "The Card Sharps," and this attracted the attention of the Cardinal Francesco Maria del Monte, whom ended up giving Caravaggio commissions for biblical works. And although he was a favorite of the Catholic Church, most contemporary people thought that he was an affront to good taste. And one very famously, he was called the Antichrist of painting because of the fact that he had so little training and knowledge on how to actually paint. But yet, because of his novel styles and his inventions, he became one of the favorite commissioned artists of the Catholic Church. And he would have what would be known, come to be known as Caravistis, the little Caravaggios, the people who would follow in his footsteps. In 1606, he was in a brothel, and he was drinking and got into a fight and ended up killing the man. Was it a brawl or a duel? We don't really know, but he ended up killing this individual, and he was arrested, and he was tried and sentenced to beheading. And prior to the sentencing being carried out, he fled. First, he fled to Naples, and then he went to Malta and Sicily, and he was sheltered and he was taken in by these rich, wealthy families who knew who he was and knew of his great works and his greatness, and kept him from being beheaded. And there's a lot of paintings that he did while he was in exile. And then in 1609, mysteriously, he died due to an illness or murder. We don't really know. There's a lot of kind of question marks hanging over Caravaggio's life. But what we do know of him is his amazing dramatic style that he really, quite honestly, invented. Or maybe perfected. I think maybe a few chapters ago we talked about this idea of what is called tenebrism. But we'll look at it in a minute. So this is the card sharps. This is what helped get Caravaggio noticed by the Cardinal Francesco Maria del Monte. So a few things about Caravaggio just in general. Again, he was a person of the streets. He was from the streets. So those were his people. And he would often use models of real people rather than or he would go out into public and use real people for the models rather than hiring professional models for his paintings. And this, he would hire all sorts of various ruffians and different types of people in all different types of class systems and dress to be the stand-in model. And he would just kind of get the figure sketch, the rough kind of sketch, and then or the gesture drawing, and then he would go back and he would paint. So this is kind of a humorous painting. This is, and yes, it is spelled correctly. The card sharps. We have now changed it to sharks. The idea that they are cheating. These two are the card sharps. And they are cheating this nobleman. You can see by the holes in his glove, and they're trying to dress as fancy as they can. But you can tell that with his fine linens here and his silk and velvet garments, that he is the nobleman, the hat. He is definitely the one who has the money, and they're gambling against this person, and he's reading over his shoulder and signaling to him, and he's got the different cards in the back, and this is kind of a funny, humorous, everyday realness. There's a very real quality to this, not necessarily in maybe the looks on their faces or some of the aspects, but definitely in what is happening. The people on the streets, this is how they would act. This is what they would be doing. This is not flashy. This is not fancy. This is not, difficult to read. This is something that everybody can look at and understand. Here's another early work of the musicians. He often would paint kind of these young, beautiful men, oftentimes. And this was, these types of paintings were, in his early works, were often painted for private homes and, to be in people's houses. They weren't necessarily very... He wasn't noted yet. He wasn't strong in I guess, Caravistian style yet. But you can see that he doesn't really know what to do with this background, right? Some of his proportions are not quite right. The eyebrows, the eyes are too big. And we're looking at some of these other examples from previous chapters, right? These look a few steps back from the the realism that we've been seeing. The linear proportions, the foreshortening here, the fiddle or violin, I suppose at this point, because it's classical music. I don't think they had bluegrass or country music yet. But the idea that, this linear perspective is not even remotely close and proportionate to the size of the people, and the fact that this person here with the lute, this person here with the lute is, even though he's behind this person here, this person appears to be much smaller. So it's not a size, it is a linear perspective issue. It's not a size issue, or not like sizes of a human or sizes of the person or age difference. It's just a linear perspective idea. The way that it just doesn't quite work out yet for Caravaggio. All right, so let's look at some of his more popular works, and this is now we're getting into his he's in his stride now. He is doing his mature work, and what we're gonna see is this idea of tenebrism, which is tenebrism is like extreme lighting, okay, like an extreme contrast. It's like taking chiaroscuro and giving it steroids, right? Extreme contrast, extreme highlights, extreme action, extreme emotion, right? There's just this, the dynamic range, the highest highs, brightest whites to the darkest darks. And you can see that this is almost black. You can't even see anything in here. And then some of these bright white highlights are so bright, it just makes this light just explode. And this high contrast line here, drawing your eye, it is just all highlights. It's all emotion. So a couple different things, it isolates the characters from the background. It helps. This is born out of necessity. Again, Caravaggio taught himself how to paint and taught himself these skills. So he was making it up as he went along. He didn't necessarily know how to paint backgrounds. So what he ended up starting to do is he started painting backgrounds in these really, really dark, thick chocolates, these really dark reds, greens, to be able to, almost to black. Really, it kind of makes, again, the figures stand out and puts the emphasis on that. But it's over dramatized, and it's overly dramatic and overly theatrical, overly emotional. It's quite stunning to look at. Caravaggio is amazing. This painting is The Calling of St. Matthew. This is St. Matthew. St. Matthew is the tax collector, right? He's being called to God by Christ. And we can see this because it's the divine light. And if you look at the hand, this is Jesus, and you can tell there's a slight halo here. And you automatically, this will recall you to Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel, the Adam's hand when he's touching God. It is an interesting kind of painting, because at the time, what he's really showing is that St. Matthew, he's in with these hooligans, these thuggish brutes in the back room of this establishment, and this guy doesn't even pay it. He's so busy counting money, and they're so busy doing the tax collecting that he's not even paying attention to the fact that Jesus is walking in through the door and this divine light is splashing on him. And I like that even St. Matthew, he's kind of shocked himself, like, me? Or, but I also like the play on the idea of, like, what, me or him? Like, who's he pointing to? Right? Because Jesus's fingers are, well, he's bent, so he's kind of ambiguous. Again, and but it is rather humorous, this idea. I like that. But it is amazingly dramatic here, and the highlight on this face so you can see everything. I'm like, this is very, very, very real. He is becoming very good at painting. Oh, and I should probably mention, again, this is a biblical story, right? But this is familiar. It's regular. It's everyday people. But it lacks every aspect of biblical flashiness or biblical effect or any type of like divine, kind of special effects, and it is just an intense image, and you are going to see as Caravaggio develops this tenebristic style that intensity grow. This is another commissioned work. This is the Conversion of St. Paul. Now, we've seen this image before as well, and I'll show you that in a minute. This is St. Paul. He's the persecutor of Christians, right? So we've seen this before. This is from Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel. This is the Conversion of St. Paul as well, where God is sending his divine power, the divine light down, and Paul falls from his horse. So let's go back to this one. I just want to show you the difference, the drastic difference. Sistine Chapel, high Renaissance, right? Mannerism, now Baroque. Look at how different the styles have become. So, this particular St. Paul is on his way to Damascus in Syria, and he's the persecutor of Christians, and he is hit by God's divine light, and he is knocked from his horse. And upon awakening from this experience, he changes his name from who he was originally, Saul, to Paul. And he no longer persecutes Christians, but rather spreads the gospel. He ends up, St. Paul writes large parts of the New Testament. But Caravaggio, even though he is liked by the church, not everybody likes him. A very famous critic at the time says that this kind of looks like St. Paul was a drunkard that had fallen off his horse rather than this divine light, because there is no presence of God other than the light itself. There is no, at least in Michelangelo, God is, seen with having the light detract from his arm. Here, all it is a very real, familiar kind of feeling to it, where there's a gentleman falls off his horse. This seems to be a very human story. Right, that it's a biblical scene, but it has become realized that it's just a story of human beings that act outside of their control. But it is quiet, it's calm, it's kind of stripped of the pageantry of all of this, the extravagance. It's just dynamic, it's intense, but we see the tenebristic style, right, where all of the background, and some of it even in the detail, is just this extreme contrast, and this really helps to emphasize this divine light of God. And I think that is what gives Caravaggio some of his appeal, or at least to me, is this really rich color schematics, with the tenebrism, with the dark backgrounds, all of the subjects just pop right off the page, right off the canvas, and it makes it come alive. The reds are that much more intense. You can see that chiaroscuro, but it's way more realistic. It is way more, you can see specific muscle separations in the forearm, right? This isn't what we've seen before. The way that some of these muscle separations are here. This is not how we've seen the human being depicted. Again, we've looked at this one. This is the entombment, from the chapel of the Petrovatrice of Santa Maria Vasilia in Rome. We've looked at this, and again, his proportions aren't quite right. This individual's head appears to be too large for the amount of foreshortening that is happening in this individual's arms. And his linear perspective isn't fantastic, but it is, really kind of to be said he is the first modern artist, because he is really painting for an interaction with our emotions, but like from a psychological behavior or psychological point of view. I think because of the way that he is expressing facial features, the way that he is going to be expressing human emotions that way, that people can all, they can relate to, right? This is the taking of Christ. Again, we've seen this image, right? The betrayal of Judas. You will know it is he when I give him a kiss him on the cheek. But look at how dramatic it is. Look at the amount of look at the tenebrism. Look at the sheen here. This amazing glare off of the metal armor. Where is that light coming from? It's so dark, but it's almost as if there's like a spotlight here, right? But Jesus looks like a regular person. There's no divine pageantry. There's no he's not buff. If it were Michelangelo or anybody else painting it, right, everybody would be naked, everybody would be fit, everybody would be super holy, super perfect, super beautiful, right? They would all have halos, and everything would look amazing. That's not what we see here. It kind of feels like these are just regular people. This is just a regular scene. So it is just an interesting, I guess, play on some of the works that we've seen already thus far. But there are flaws. As great as Caravaggio is, again, the foreshortening, linear perspective on his hand is not quite there, right? Potato. I'm splitting hairs, but I'm just saying. I'm trying to point out that right. This is why people thought that he was the Antichrist of painting, an affront to good taste, because he didn't know how to do these things, and he just taught himself, and because he was a drunkard that would go to the bar and fight and cause problems and so on and so forth, and because he was from a lower class, he was this Antichrist. He was just kind of this outcast, right? But his pictorial programming, man, he resonates with people on a very emotional level. And again, this is why it doesn't do it on purpose, but the people that are following Caravaggio will refer to them as Caravistis. And again, these are the little Caravaggios, right? Boop. Okay, and then let's look at the death of the Virgin as a last painting from Caravaggio. Now, there's a few different things going on here that I would like to point out. So, again, since he was, I guess, a man of the street, and he would use everyday people as models, it should come to no surprise to you, and really should be no big deal, but this is the death of Mary, the Virgin Mary. And it is said that he used a prostitute. He hired a prostitute to be the model for Mary. which was extremely controversial. Even if that happened, or I don't know if that's more, anecdotal story or if that's true. Either way, it caused an amazing amount of controversy just for the fact of who the virgin is and the fact that you would hire a prostitute to do this. It was grotesque. It was unconventional. The painting itself, the death of the Virgin Mary, we've seen like the ascensions of Count Orgaz, and we've seen the ascension of the Virgin, where it was this very over-the-top bombastic kind of the sky was opening, right? Jesus was, and God was welcoming them. There's a choir of angels and all the saints. It was a very pomp and circumstance kind of scene. Here, this is grotesque. This is kind of showing an indignity to her position. She is shown with this, right? Let's just look at her real quick. Her hand is just kind of strewn in this unnatural, just last-minute death throw position, where it's a very uncomfortable, seemingly uncomfortable position of her arm. Her face or her skin has this greenish kind of hue to it. There's a funny bloat to her body. Her feet are just kind of haphazardly hanging out of her dress and her garment, her blankets here. It is just an unflattering, very real image of death, and especially for somebody like the Virgin Mary, where she's always been heralded as, this godlike figure within art. That's not what we see here. She's surrounded by the apostles, but they're not these, again, if it was Michelangelo, they'd all be buff and naked and beautiful. But they're not. They're old and they're bald and they're feeble, and they just look like regular folks. They seem to have genuine sorrow, right? They're kind of, this is what happens when people die. You cry, you break down. I mean, look at Mary Magdalene. The Magdalene is absolutely head in hands sobbing. But some of the tableaus that you would see, the wash basin, washing your feet. This is showing like a real life aspect of the Magdalene being friends with the Virgin Mary, and staying by her side. And look, when the Virgin passes, she is just absolutely distraught. Death comes and we don't see her face, right? She is just absolutely crushed. I've been in that position, and maybe many of you have as well. So this hits home to a lot of people. This is why people liked Caravaggio, because they looked like regular people. They felt like regular people. It was almost as if Mary and Jesus and all the apostles, they were just like us. So there was a believability to it. And I think this is probably and partly why the church was using these, remember, because they were kind of structuring art and imagery, and they wanted to get the people who had left the church or kind of had fallen to the wayside because of the Protestant Reformation back into the church. So how do you do that? You start painting them as the subjects. You start including them within the artworks. Now, I'm not saying Caravaggio was doing this like propaganda purposes. I think he was just painting because that's what he was doing. That's what he did. But I think the church had seen this aspect of him, and I think they probably flaunted it, right? Another thing that is really interesting, there's no grand religious gesture here, right? Even though there's a faint halo. It's a really bad inset, I apologize, but there's a faint halo here around the Virgin's head. That's about the only way that you would know that this is a biblical scene. Other than that, you would have no real recollection, no real way of knowing that this was anybody of importance. This just looks like a scene of somebody that had just died. But we've looked at these before, and we see the curtain, right? The veil being lifted, the curtain being lifted. So the idea that he's showing real life, that, right, death comes to us all, and this is what, this is what real life is. This is what's behind the curtain. It's not pageantry. It's not pomp and circumstance. It's just genuine, true sorrow and grief. That's humanity. That's what being human is. That's what being real is.